I'm going to be testing out 3 different Forstner bits today. We're going to take a look at the Freud Precision Shear, the Fisch Black Shark, and the BORA Tempest. To test out these bits, I'll be drilling 100 holes into 2 different species of wood, white oak and soft maple. Along the way, I'll be measuring the temperature of these bits as they go through that 100-hole march. I'll be seeing how much force is needed to pull the bit down into the wood at the drill press, and we'll also be taking a look at the types of chips that are being produced. Are we getting nice shavings or are we just getting dust? So let's jump in and see what we got. I rigged up a force gauge to one of the arms on my drill press so that way I could see how much force was needed to drill the holes with each one of these Forstner bits. And as you can see from the chart, the Fisch Black Shark bit consistently needed the least amount of force to drill the holes. To measure how hot each one of these bits got during our testing, I used an infrared thermometer. I found it really interesting that the Fisch Black Shark bit only had an 8-degree temperature rise, and the Freud Precision Shear had the lowest initial temperature, but throughout the course of drilling, its temperature rose about 32 degrees, whereas the BORA Tempest overall had the highest temperatures, but it only rose about 19 degrees throughout the course of all the drilling. From the first hole to the 100th hole, each one of these drill bits made clean shavings and clean holes. The only thing that I'll really say is that the Fisch Black Shark and the BORA Tempest produced a little bit more sawdust on top of the wood than the Freud Precision Shear did. Originally, I was planning on using 1 bit for each species, but honestly, there hasn't been enough of a difference in the quality from the first hole to the 100th hole, so we're going to stick with the same bit for both the white oak and maple. So let's keep going. Just like we saw previously in the white oak, the Fisch Black Shark consistently needed the least amount of force to successfully drill each one of the holes. When drilling into the soft maple, the Freud Precision Shear and the Fisch Black Shark were pretty close in terms of overall temperature, but on average the BORA Tempest ran about 30 to 40 degrees hotter. At this point, all the bits are still producing good shavings. But the only thing I'll point out is that the Freud Precision Shear is starting to leave some burn marks in the bottom of the holes. I have some hickory left over from a project, and I have enough to drill about 35 holes. We'll see what kind of toll that takes on the bits, and we'll go from there. It's probably not a surprise to see the Fisch Black Shark requiring the least amount of force to drill into this hickory. But what did surprise me is that the force required for the Freud and Fisch bits was pretty close to what I'd recorded when drilling into the white oak. As far as the temperature readings go for each one of these bits, the Freud Precision Shear and the Fisch Black Shark are still pretty close, while the BORA Tempest is roughly 50 degrees hotter than the other two. As you can see, the chips are still looking pretty good. The hole quality at the very last one, there's a little bit of tearing on the inside at the end grain, but overall, not too bad. The shavings, again, they look amazing. Really minimal dust here on the top. This bit seemed to go through the wood a little bit easier than the Freud did, and the hole quality on all of these, it really looks great. There was more pressure required to drill the holes with this bit than the other 2 bits, but really the shavings are still looking good. We're still getting a good quality hole. Now we're going to do some in-grain drilling. Now the first hole that I drill is going to be with a fresh bit from each one of the 3 bits that we're evaluating. After that, I'll drill 15 holes in white oak, soft maple, and a couple in hickory. We're going to see how the bits perform and stack up to one another. That first hole from the Freud bit, really clean. Lots of dust though, but that's to be expected with end grain drilling. With the first hole that we drilled with that old bit, the hole still looked pretty clean, still feels good. There's more force needed for this one and a lot more dust. Just like we've been doing so far, I'm going to continue measuring the temperature of the bits as I progress through the remainder of this test. So I've done all the in-grain drilling for the Freud Precision Shear in each one of these blocks, and overall it did pretty well. As far as the chips and shavings look pretty good. And even the cut quality in this last hole that I drilled in hickory looks pretty good. So this is the first hole that was drilled with a fresh bit. Looks really good. Okay, so we drilled our series of in-grain holes with the Fisch Black Shark bit, and again, it did a really good job. There's about the same amount of dust between this Black Shark bit and the precision shear bit that I see here on top of the drill press. As far as the force exerted, it felt like overall the Fisch bit went into the wood a little bit more easily than the Freud bit. Here's the hole that we drilled with the fresh BORA Tempest bit. There's more force needed to push this one through the wood than the other fresh bits, but that's been pretty standard. Okay, so we're all wrapped up drilling the holes in the end grain with the BORA Tempest. And I will say there was a noticeable difference in the amount of force needed to push this bit through the wood as compared to the precision shear or the Black Shark. One thing I like about this bit is that the top of the bit is a smaller diameter than the cutting edge of the bit, and that reduces that chatter that you get sometimes where you're pulling the bit back out of the wood. As you can see, the shavings are still nice and fluffy. There was a little bit more dust on top of each one of the pieces as they were being cut, but the whole quality is still good, and that's obviously what matters the most. I wanted you to be able to see all of the numbers for the end grain drilling test in one place. So to recap those here, here's how much force was needed for each bit, along with the temperature of each bit during that end grain drilling test. All three of these bits have their own benefits, and for the BORA Tempest, its biggest benefit is that it's the least expensive of the three. Now, with this economy bit, you're of course going to have a couple of performance drawbacks, but don't let that fool you. It still performed really well, and it made very clean holes in all three species in all three drilling conditions. The biggest thing is that the BORA Tempest needed a little bit more force to get through the wood than the other two. Now, speaking of the Freud Precision Shear and the Fisch Black Shark, anecdotally, after the first 150 to 200 holes, the Fisch Black Shark really started to stand out. It didn't leave as much charring or burning on the wood as the Freud Precision Shear. And the other thing that I'll say is that the Freud Precision Shear, it needed more force, especially after that 150 to 200 hole count. It needed more force to get the bit through the wood than the Fisch Black Shark did in any of the drilling conditions. Both of these bits continue to produce good quality holes even toward the very end of our testing. The only thing that I'll say that stood between these two bits is that from the very beginning, the Freud Precision Shear left these grooves along the side wall of the hole, whereas the Fisch Black Shark had a very smooth wall to the side of the hole. With all of that said, the decision is now in your hands, and until next time, let the sawdust fly and have fun making something.